Hello everyone, friends. A fresh review of Bitcoin. So what do we have here? It's Monday, a new work week has begun, and last night, Bitcoin once again touched the mark of $80,000. I see the chats. I see that many are already planning to catch this bottom, buying aggressively because from here, it's only a pump. So, let's talk today about whether this is really the case, or if there are still reasons to go down. Plus, today, my dear friends, I want to take a broader look at Bitcoin and its cycles, and we will try to examine the previous cycle. It's clear that comparisons don't guarantee future outcomes. Nevertheless, I want to see how the market behaved during this dip, what happened with altcoins and how everything either shot up or didn't after the next all-time high update for Bitcoin. In short, there's a lot to analyze, so let's move on to the charts. Be sure to give this video a like. I also strongly recommend subscribing to my Telegram channel to not miss any important information or updates. Join in and subscribe. The link is below the video. My Telegram channel is Falcon Investors. And now let's get down to business. Let's start with Bitcoin and take a local look at what has happened, because there's a lot of interesting stuff here. So first, let's even open the 4-hour time frame. So what has been happening? I remind you, yes, the $92,000 zone. During the previous review, I recorded saying, how does this structure look? As if we are going to go lower again. In fact, we have now pulled back down and are standing essentially at the most important key zone below which there is only an abyss. So please take a look. We have the 200-day moving average here. We are currently trading below it. And this block is the last long level before the marks that I have indicated several times. Before the zone, let's average it out to make it simpler. Before the $70,000 zone. In fact, we are seeing some kind of rebound here. But for me, the scenario hasn't changed globally because right here we had a trend break. Moreover, take a close look at how this picture looks. We have an upward structure, then we are in such a long sideways movement. And after that, an interesting event occurred. We fell out of the $92,000 zone, returned on the daily time frame, essentially for confirmation, and couldn't break higher. And now we are rolling back. So for me, this scenario looks like a scenario for going further down. That is, I can easily assume that there will be some kind of rebound here, but I can also allow for the possibility that this will happen later. So, bam, we fell out. Therefore, I keep in mind that right now, even buying, for example, at this level in general, it can be done because I might be wrong. And for instance, it might be that this level will defend once again. Yes, in general, you can open a position here with a fairly understandable short stop and with targets somewhere around here. But still, the $92,000 zone is key. As long as we are not above it, our priority is downwards because here the trend has actually broken. You can try to build positions from here. I exclusively, as you know, follow DCA. Today is Monday. I bought according to DCA, made my purchase in Bitcoin. But again, while buying, I understand that overall we might still roll even lower. That's why I'm opening positions here. In my opinion, you can do it with a short stop loss, because if we break these lows, then I will be watching Bitcoin in my mind, at least in the $70,000 zone. So that's roughly the scenario. Key point. Once again, I draw your attention. The large structure is ascending sideways. We fell out, returned to confirm this level, rolling down. So the idea of buying back here in an extremely aggressive manner and so on, in my opinion, is somewhat, well, a bit of a gambling idea. Because there are a lot of factors here. It suggests that we might continue to fall further. We will also take a look at alts regarding whether to buy them back aggressively. There, in my opinion, the picture is roughly the same. So, I don't know if you agree or disagree. I will be setting up grids. Here, perhaps, is the key question that arises now. And overall, I even conducted a poll in the Telegram channel. Many wrote that 40% of people voted that it's the end of the bull market. And most likely, the bear market has already begun for us. And you know, I was pondering that overall, this scenario. We also need to keep this in mind. Why? Let's open the full Bitcoin chart and look at one interesting thing. So, let's take the previous cycle. Here, we had, well, two lows. Here, sort of, yes. And then actually here we had the low after which the bull market began. Let's just take it from here, for example. Let's see how long it took to reach the historical maximum. It took us 6 or 9 days. Let's assume it started from here. Then it took us 57 days. But overall, you understand that this, in my opinion, is more like another phase of the previous cycle. That is an attempt to rebound. I would still count from here because this is directly the movement after which the actual growth began. 6 or 9 days. Now we take the current cycle and look from here where the layer was set and up to the high, and essentially 798 days have passed with us. So, regarding timing, it's clear that timings never repeat and blah blah blah. Nevertheless, to at least keep some kind of timeline in mind, we should understand that in general, quite a lot of time has already passed overall. I remind you, yes, from the low, from this point to the maximum, Bitcoin gave 6 times. Can we consider that the potential for the current cycle has been realized? We must allow for it. I wouldn't want to believe it, but we must allow for it. For example, by allowing this scenario in my mind, I simply reduced the volume of purchases. So initially I thought that I would aggressively buy back in large volumes up to this zone. But I considered, what if the scenario isn't as I expect, and instead it goes down, and we have a bear market here for a couple of years? How will I feel if I aggressively buy in, even if it's just about Bitcoin, for example? If I buy back aggressively, and then it drops even further, I will be sitting at a loss for a long time. Most likely I will feel uncomfortable. Therefore, what I think makes sense to do is to buy at each subsequent level, gradually increase the volume of purchases, planning right away for the possibility that we might end up, for example, in the $35,000 zone, let's say. This is just to make it psychologically easier to handle. Of course, it's up to each individual, and it solely depends on your own risk management, your psychology, your strategy, your market outlook. But I just for myself have this scenario determined that most likely it's necessary to buy with a smaller volume, allowing for a deeper correction, which right now it seems I wouldn't want to bet on, but nevertheless, I must consider this scenario. So that's regarding Bitcoin. Let's now take a look at other coins, look at the alts, and also try to compare. Before that, guys, a small traditional reminder. If you are trading, always trade on a quality exchange. I have been trading on the Bybit exchange for many years, so if you don't have an account, I strongly recommend registering and giving it a try. Using my link and promo code under this video, you get the best commission conditions and up to $30,000 bonus on your first deposit. Now, let's move on. Let's summarize Bitcoin then. The key scenario, for now, the one I still have in mind, is a move to the $70,000 zone and then an update X, and they're a conditional range, around $130,000 to $140,000. I allow for the possibility in my mind, slightly reducing risk so as not to end up in a bad situation later. I admit that I might be wrong. And as they say, Donald Trump, whom we thought understood this topic, is currently just sinking the market in blood with all his actions. And I don't know what to call it. So far, all of this is not very positive. It is reflected, and by the way, I remind you that this movement started precisely at the moment of Trump's election. Therefore, in general, for example, this is exactly the mark of $70,000. Take a look. Therefore, overall, a correction to this zone at 70 would be a healthy movement. That is, we removed all these emotions, so to speak, traded them back, and such a movement overall logically fits into the picture. Nevertheless, I'm lowering for myself risks, simply so as not to feel problems later and not to experience them in this cycle. We have already earned enough. How can we now avoid losing and reinvesting all of this back into the market? So we keep this in mind. A few more points here. Share your thoughts, guys. Write in the comments what you think. If it's helpful, be sure to give a like. Now look, the next interesting point, we had this correction in the last cycle from $64,000 to accordingly 28. How did it happen? The peak value was April 2021. The low key line was June 2021. Now let's see how the altcoins behaved at that time. For example, let's open Dogecoin. So we are looking at Dogecoin. Doggies, dogs. Here, April. Yes, so roughly even April. Now, 1 second. Here, April, guys, we have almost, that is historical highs for Dogecoin. And accordingly, then in June, we rolled down significantly lower. And note that later Bitcoin reached an all-time high, but Dogecoin did not reach any all-time high. That's Dogecoin, for example. Let's see what else. Ripple probably, well, let's take a look. Still not a very relevant example, because they had issues there. Well, you remember, right, with the SEC? But nevertheless, April was a historical maximum. June. Here's June for us. After that, no high was set. Next, let's take Solana, for example. Solana, if I'm not mistaken, is the opposite. That is, Solana in April, right here. Then we had the Solana cycle. Huge, they soared upwards, and then the semi-scam of Solana, everyone remembers. Yes, those who were in the last cycle, but nevertheless, a high was set, for example. Cardano ADIR. So we look at April. March. April. Here we have the Bitcoin pullback in April. And then, accordingly, a new Bitcoin cycle. That is, you see, 50-50. Half of the altcoins, along with Bitcoin, have once again reached their all-time highs, while the other half have not. Why am I saying this? Because now those who are watching, for example, are saying that we need to aggressively, firmly buy back. On one hand, yes, let's just look at Pepe. Pepe has reached its top minimal values, and beyond that, there's only the historical bottom. Yes, meaning there's just an abyss beyond, and logically you want to buy here, and it seems like a great opportunity. But that's assuming Bitcoin, it will be strong. Perform? B, assuming it will perform for a long time, because unlike Bitcoin, Pepe, for example, has dropped by how much? By 80%. And accordingly, for it to recover these 80%, Bitcoin needs to perform not for 2 weeks, but for a longer period of time. That is, well, something very striking, in my opinion, should happen. Therefore, it might simply not happen at all. The same applies to tone. We have a correction from high to low, a minus 70%. Accordingly, is there a chance that even if Bitcoin goes on to perform, then these altcoins might not even reach their historical highs? They might, so it probably makes sense to buy, but to buy carefully, assuming that this might not happen, rather than just mindlessly accumulating. I remind you, I don't know if everyone remembers how it was, for example, in the previous cycle. Let me open a clean chart and show you what it was like. I think not everyone might remember, but let's do it this way instead. On the weekly chart. All right, guys, let's move on. So on the weekly chart, at that moment when the market was falling, it was at the mark of $48,000. Right here, everyone was absolutely convinced that we had pulled back very sharply after the high. Here, a 40% drop followed, and at this moment, everyone was buying aggressively because they thought it was going further. We were heading somewhere towards $100,000, but in the end, Bitcoin traded here, bounced back, dropped again, bounced back, and then rolled into a bear market for 2 years. In fact, this is how it ended for a huge number of golden hands that were accumulated. Right here, and it remained. Now, naturally, many are looking and thinking, last time we had 2 such peaks, so this time we should also have 2 peaks. But let's look at it differently. Here we have the first peak, here we have the second peak, if you like it that way. Keep that in mind, right? Therefore, the scenarios can be absolutely diverse. I wouldn't be so sure. And convinced that there is only one upward scenario. It's better to be cautious, even though I myself mostly expect a continued growth. In my opinion, it's better to be a bit cautious now. And when buying, buy wisely. And kind of allow for the possibility that you might have to buy back lower. Or you'll have to stay in these positions, sit for some time. Then everything will be okay. In my opinion. That's it. Otherwise, of course, the fear and greed index in the market is off the chart. Everyone is in fear, so of course not buying is probably not a very good idea either. Because when there is panic in the market, you should still buy. Therefore, just adhere to risk management. Manager, then everything will be okay. That's all, my dear ones. Everything you need to know for today to get maximum profit in the market. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you don't miss new releases. And of course, every comment is very important to me, so be sure to hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, write what you think, whether you are taking any positions or expecting something. It's always very interesting to read. That's all. Wishing everyone big profits. Bye-bye.